Sao Paulo is one of the 26 states of the Federative Republic of Brazil and is named after St. Paul of Tarsus, a major industrial complex. The state has 21.9% of the Brazilian population and is responsible for 33.9% of Brazil's GDP. Sao Paulo also has the second highest Human Development Index and GDP per capita, the fourth lowest infant mortality rate, the third highest life expectancy, and the third lowest rate of illiteracy among the federative units of Brazil. Sao Paulo alone is wealthier than Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, and Bolivia combined. Sao Paulo is also the world's 28th most populous subnational entity and the most populous subnational entity in the Americas. With more than 46 million inhabitants in 2019, Sao Paulo is the most populous Brazilian state, the most populous national subdivision in the Americas, and the third most populous political unit of South America, surpassed only by the rest of the Brazilian Federation and Colombia. The local population is one of the most diverse in the country and descended mostly from Italians, who began immigrating to the country in the late 19th century, of the Portuguese, who colonized Brazil and installed the first European settlements in the region. Indigenous peoples, many distinct ethnic groups, Africans, who were brought from Africa as slaves in the colonial era, and migrants from other regions of the country. In addition, Arabs, Germans, Spanish, Japanese, Chinese, and Greeks also are present in the ethnic composition of the local population. The area that today corresponds to the state territory was already inhabited by indigenous peoples from approximately 12,000 BC. In the early 16th century, the coast of the region was visited by Portuguese and Spanish explorers and navigators. In 1532, Martim Afonso de Souza would establish the first Portuguese permanent settlement in the Americas, the village of São Vicente, in the Baixada Santista. In the 17th century, the Paulistas Bandeirantes intensified the exploration of the colony's interior, which eventually expanded the territorial domain of Portugal and the Portuguese Empire in South America. In the 18th century, after the establishment of the province of Sao Paulo, the region began to gain political weight. After independence in 1820, Sao Paulo began to become a major agricultural producer in the newly constituted Empire of Brazil, which ultimately created a rich regional rural oligarchy, which would switch on the command of the Brazilian government with Minas Gerais' elites during the early Republican period in the 1880s. Under the Vargas era, the state was one of the first to initiate a process of industrialization and its population became one of the most urban of the federation. The city of Sao Paulo, the homonymous state capital, is ranked as the world's 12th largest city in its metropolitan area. With 20 million inhabitants, is the 9th largest in the world and first in the Americas. Regions near the city of Sao Paulo are also metropolitan areas, such as Campinas, Santos, Sorocaba and São José dos Campos. The total population of these areas, coupled with the state capital, the so-called expanded metropolitan complex of Sao Paulo, exceeds 30 million inhabitants, i.e. approximately 75% of the population of Sao Paulo statewide. The first macro-metropolis in the southern hemisphere, joining 65 municipalities that together are home to 12% of the Brazilian population. In pre-European times, the area that is now Sao Paulo state was occupied by the Tupi Peoples nation, who subsisted through hunting and cultivation. The first European to settle in the area was João Ramalho, a Portuguese sailor who may have been shipwrecked around 1510. 10 years after the first Portuguese landfall in Brazil, he married the daughter of a local chieftain and became a settler. In 1532, the first colonial expedition, led by Martim Afonso de Souza of Portugal, landed at São Vicente. De Souza added Ramalho's settlement to his colony. Early European colonization of Brazil was very limited. Portugal was more interested in Africa and Asia, but with English and French raiding privateer ships just off the coast, the territory had to be protected. Unwilling to shoulder the naval defense burden himself, the Portuguese ruler, King João III, divided the coast into captaincies, or swathes of land, 50 leagues apart. He distributed them among well-connected Portuguese, hoping that each would be self-reliant. The early port and sugar-cultivating settlement of São Vicente was one rare success connected to this policy. In 1548, João III brought Brazil under direct royal control. Fearing Indian attack, he discouraged development of the territory's vast interior. Some whites headed nonetheless for Piratininga, a plateau near São Vicente. Drawn by its navigable rivers and agricultural potential, Borda do Campo, the plateau settlement, became an official town in 1553. The history of Sao Paulo city proper begins with